Hello there. Welcome to the conversation. As usual, we have an amazing guest on today, someone that David and I both have had the pleasure of working with on several occasions. This particular individual is pretty prolific in the local market here. I feel like I don't think I've ever been on a production where he's not involved on it, which is kind of funny. It's almost like it feels weird when he's not. Like, where's Shawn? He's a local actor who, because he also is also a qualified stunt performer, he is probably why he's the perfect choice, because in video games often we have cut scenes that have a lot of action in them, so he's super versatile. He's also kind of a pretty big I don't know. I think he'd probably wear this as a badge, but he's just like us. He's cut from the same cloth. I'll call him a professional nerd. I'll let him get into that a little bit, and you'll see kind of what I'm talking about, because he does a lot of fan films, and he's just awesome. So I'm excited to have him on today. His name's Shawn Baichoo, but of course, before we bring him on, I'm going to bring in David so we can kind of prime it up. Let's bring in Dave. Hello.
Hey, Brent.
How are you?
So it's official. We're rebranding this stream as The Conversation and not Conversation with.
Is that what we're going to do? Okay, I like it. I like it.
That's what we're going to do now.
It rings true? Okay, done. T-shirts are going to be printed next week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Shawn is pretty amazing. And when we discussed a couple of months ago, we mainly had animators, animation director, and all that. And at some point, like, okay, let's diversify with other expertise that are kind of in periphery of animation, but could complement those discussions pretty well.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about, okay, like actors are one of them, Shawn obviously was one of our top of the list. So let's say that today is the third conversation of the three-part conversation that we started with Elias and then Amber a couple of weeks back. And now let's conclude this with Shawn.
That's it. Let's save the amazing Shawn Baichoo for last. I think the interesting thing about doing this, just for you those in chat, is because you probably hear us talk a lot about how actors and animators are kind of really existing in the same plane. They're just two sides of the same coin. The way that they accomplish their task might be very different, but a lot of the same rationale and thinking should be shared, because at the end of the day, we're worried about making sure that characters feels properly motivated on the screen and they look good in front of the camera. Well, that is exactly what actors are doing in real time, where we're kind of doing it in a sort of a frame by frame, sort of slowed down, dilated timescale sense, right? So I think a lot of the stuff that comes up in these conversations should be extremely applicable. So let's bring in the one and only Shawn Baichoo and see what he's got to say. Hello, Shawn.
What's up, guys?
How are you? Were you offended by my professional nerd comment? Probably not.
I wore it like a badge of honor, just like you said.
That's good. That's good.
I wore it proudly. Thanks for the great intro, guys. It means a lot. I would just like to say, for my part, you have both been amazing guys to work with, and you guys go back to my earlier days of mocap, so my feel and my relationship with mocap was very much largely influenced by you guys, and it is a very positive one. So
awesome.
It's a pleasure to be here today and to talk with you guys about this stuff.
That's awesome.
So let's get this first question out of the way. Shawn, have you worked on all of the game produced in Montreal, or is that just a rumor, or there's some truth in it?
I wish that were true. I wish that were 100% true. I've worked on a lot of games.
A lot.
For a while, I had worked on every Assassin's Creed game that had come out in some capacity. It started larger and then got smaller because I do more and more like character stuff or living world stuff. Now there have been plenty of games that haven't had me in them. But I was actually not for narcissistic reasons, but I was counting out how many credits I actually had, because someone was asking me, and it was just a rough calculations, because voice and mocap both count as video game credits for me, but some of them overlap, of course. Some I just do voice, some I just do mocap, some I do both. But it was around, like, I think 70 or something. Which I find pretty awesome and really cool. So I've been in a lot of games, but my goal is one day to be in every single game that comes out all the time, and then people get Shawn fatigue. And
is that even a thing? I don't think that's a thing.
Not yet. I don't think it's a thing yet.
So something that you mentioned, Shawn, that you started, in your early days, and that's something that we've covered briefly with Amber as well, that we had a couple of weeks ago, was when you guys started, it was a little bit in a weird, because because back in the days, animation in game and performance was almost like a thing on the side, and then eventually it started to evolve to a point that now maybe it makes sense. We have the tech and the means to benefit from good actors, but in the beginning it was still like you had voiceover that you had to mimic on top of the voiceover, or sometimes it was the other way around. So from the beginning to now, full performance capture, that all of your performance is captured. How would you describe your first experience of mocap in game? So when was it, and what was it like?
So that's a great question, actually. So my earliest memory of anything having to do with mocap is I was at Game On Studios. For your listeners, Game On is a Montreal studio that you started off doing voice, but now has expanded into mocap. I was at Game On when they were on Saint Laurent Street, and I was early, either for a booking or an audition. I forget which. I think it might have been an audition. I was pretty early, so actors take note. Showing up early can have big benefits sometimes. And I look out on they had this little terrace area at the back, and I see Simon Peacock there. For your listeners, Simon is one of the premier voice directors in Montreal, and a friend of mine. So, and he was talking to some guy I didn't know. So I came out and I'm like, "Hey guys, do you mind if I join you? I've got some time to spare." They were having lunch. And they're like, "Yeah, come on, sit down." So Simon introduced me to this man named Sylvain, and I'm like, "What do you do, Sylvain?" He says, "Oh, I run the mocap studio at Ubisoft."
Sorry, was it Sylvain Bernard?
Yes. That's exactly. Yes. Sylvain Bernard is the guy who got me started. Sylvain says, I do this mocap stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, mocap. Like, what is that? Like, I hadn't really ever heard of it, just in passing a little. And he kind of explained what it was. And I did something I'd never done before, and I don't think I've ever done since, which is I kind of pitched myself. Not physically. I didn't assault the man. But I'm like, listen, man, if ever you're looking for actors, I do martial arts. I'm a movement guy. I'm bilingual. I'm a gamer. I just like everything that came by my head as being useful to this. I told him. I was very enthusiastic about it because it sounded super fun. Acting in video games, that's such a crazy concept for me, My nerd badge was tingling at the time.
Oh, for sure.
And he's like, yeah, okay. He says, yeah, I'll keep you in mind that, maybe I'll give you a call sometime. And I was like, cool, thanks. In the back of my head, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to hear from this guy. He probably gets the spiel like 20 times a day.
Yeah. Like at the grocery store, basically, everywhere he goes.
And it's such a beginning actor thing to go, oh, hey, if ever you're looking for actors, yes, they're so hard to find. So few people want acting jobs. Let me give this one to you. So I just kind of put it out of my mind. And 2 weeks later, I got a call from my agent saying that Ubisoft wanted me to come in and do a half day of mocap. So I went. It went super well. I had I think a pretty good affinity for it. And then I don't really remember the job it was for, but I know that not long after that, the auditions for Assassin's Creed 2 came up, and I auditioned for Machiavelli, and I got the part. And so, I had broken into mocap a bit. Machiavelli had a lot of mocap to do. So then I got hired on as Machiavelli, and I also went on to play Father Maffei, and then I also played Duccio. And then they kept me on to do all sorts of just mocap stuff to play Shawn, the scientist guy in the real world. I forget it. Hastings, I think is his name. So I did all of Shawn's mocap, and that was the experience I remember the most, which is a lot like what David is saying, syncing up to performance. So I remember early days, we had to wear the helmet that had like a bunch of cables. It almost looked like the Predator, like cable dreadlocks coming out the back of my head. This thick knot of cables that went over my shoulder, down my back, and then each actor had a PA, a production assistant, assigned to them just to maneuver their cables out of the way so I didn't trip on them because we're moving around.
They're like carrying around the cables like a princess's cape or gown,
kind
right?
of. Yeah. All I needed was them to be throwing rose petals, and I would have felt right at home. So that I remember, and the helmets were like screwed on super tight. They screwed right at the temples, so it was a guaranteed headache. And we had to. This is such a crazy thing for me to think of today with how far things have gone. But we had to get the scripts in advance, usually a few days in advance, learn them by heart, then get to the studio, do our ROM, or get ready, and then ROM, sorry for your listeners, range of motion is one of the prep things we do, calibrate the system, and then ask them in the precious minutes we had before the director was like done his coffee and getting into the volume to start, be like, okay, can you play this scene? Can you play that scene? And we'd listen to the actual recording from the actors, which we wouldn't have heard up until that point. And what's kind of funny is Shawn, the guy who played Shawn, I forget his name, but he's a pretty well-known British comedian actor guy. And this guy, he talks like this a lot. He's got a lot of weird pauses when he's weird packaging in his energy. Right. So I'm learning text, which is like, in 1842, this, it would be earlier than that because it's assassin. In 1612, the mayor of this town did blah, 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 and the queen, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, so I'd learn it. Then he's like, in 1842, I'm like, oh, fuck's sake, you can't even say like a date without pausing it. So I actually went on YouTube and I would look up all the clips I could find of this guy just doing interviews and acting to learn his cadence and his energy. And I got pretty good at it by the end, or maybe by the end before then, but like I would come in, I'd make certain decisions for him before hearing what he did. And sometimes I'd be right. So all the actors would have to do this. We'd have to learn the timing that the actors delivered and then build our blocking, our movement around that dialogue.
It's crazy. With
a PA moving our cables and not tripping over each other and all this stuff. So it was a very involved process. I loved every minute of it. And I've seen the technology evolve continuously over the years to become more wireless, no cables, more actors on set, better data, much greater facial recognition, stuff like that. So, wireless, yeah. So early days were a challenge. And I think the thing I like most now, not only the fact that you can actually get your performance captured in your mocap suit, you don't have to do it separately in the studio, but the helmets are much more comfortable now. They're much more manageable. So it's no longer a guaranteed headache. I remember when I got quite a few days back in the day, like any day I'd come in with this kind of trepidation that like, are we doing helmets today? And if the answer was yes, it was like, I'm in for a rough day of headaches, but it pays a lot more. So think of the money. And then on days where there would be no helmets, it'd be paid less because it's just motion capture. I'd be like, oh, thank God, I got an easier day. It doesn't pay as well, but it's not going to be as taxing. So I kind of had to, weigh those two against each other. But today, that's not really an issue anymore.
I would have loved to have been in the room the day that somebody finally went and said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we just capture the actual audio recording at the same time right now while we're doing all this stuff and just look at everyone's face going, that's crazy. We can't do that.
Can't be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm scared the technology was just waiting to catch up to that.
Well, it's not, it wasn't just technology. There was a lot of resistance because it just wasn't the way to do things. There was a big firm belief, there still is, and David can vouch for me on this one. There's still a firm belief, especially with a lot of audio directors out there, and possibly producers who feel that that's the way that's just how you do it. They like whenever we cast and say, look, we want to cast a wide net for performers, but we need to look for the whole gamut because we're looking for someone who's got a good voice, who also can act physically. And people automatically go, oh, come on, you're looking for unicorns. It's like, You mean all the people in film and television? Are they all unicorns? But like literally, Dave and I have been in these conversations. That's literally a lot of often it's happening. It's become much more the minority, but at the beginning, that's exactly what it was like.
Yeah, there's still a lot of legacy there because, especially at the beginning, the only actors that would be hired was for voice acting. That's basically right. ADR and all that. So it was all under the umbrella of audio and audio director, and the way that you have them in the booth, you can calibrate the sound. And eventually it made more and more sense to capture, no, let's just have everything at once, the body, the face, and the voice. But it means that it's almost like the ownership of the voice. It was going from, let's say, cinematic department to the audio department. So now you had two different departments that needed to collaborate together, because of course the audio director wants to have exactly the same quality of anything that will be recorded in the booth and on the mocap shoot. If you have crappy audio quality, it's just the continuity is not, it's just not going to work. So yeah, it's something that is evolving, but we often tend to forget how rapidly video game are evolving. The tech is evolving way faster than culture and mentality and comfort zone and all of that. So much change in a decade that, yes, today it's almost a no-brainer for most studio for cinematic if you have the budget for it to do it with a performance capture. But it's still a fight with some creative director or director or even others, even producer, that still let's repeat what worked well not long ago. And for some, not long ago means 10-15 years ago, because we released a successful game with this technology. So why
exactly
why changing?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, basically, is the attitude sometimes. And I mean, I have witnessed myself since that day when I kind of rolled my eyes at the idea that people would have a problem with it. There is some good evidence that supports where the concern might have been coming from in some cases. Like, for instance, just because you're an amazing actor and you work currently in film and television doesn't mean that you can handle an actual video game style audio session. And I know, Shawn, you know what I'm talking about. All the efforts and all like just repeating the same line over and over and over again. It's like some people, like the pros that do this for a living, you can have a session, it's done in like 20 minutes. But other people, it can take hours. And it's because they may not be used to that. Like, it's just not part of their usual routine. They haven't built those muscles up yet. So, so at the end of the day, people just learn to figure out how to find a balanced candidate where we feel like they could handle a session like that, but they're good in front of the camera. We're looking for someone, because at the end of the day, that's key, is just the balance between all those things.
Yeah. And I would argue that, in the earlier days of this, it was more a question, I think, of, I'll use the term unicorn because I think that's pretty fitting. Like, you did need people with more of an affinity for to get around the limitations of the technology, right?
Definitely.
But now with motion capture, performance capture, like facial capture, and audio being really on the cutting edge and really being much more sensitive, actors don't have to do as much to work around those limitations. That's why I find the net is widening, and when I see castings in terms of who's a good fit now for a game, because they don't have to be as specialized. So I could argue that's maybe not a great thing for me, because my, what I'm uniquely good at is not as required anymore, let's say.
But you got way more experience than any of them, though.
But there's that. And that kind of ties into the point that I wanted to make, which is, theater as a form of acting and storytelling has been around for thousands of years, right? And film has been around for at least 100 years. I forget
100,
the first film, but it's, mocap's been around for what, 15 years, maybe something like that, 15, 20.
Yeah,
the early forms go way back, but like the modern style of
but there are applications to video games, like the first games that started using motion capture instead of keyframe, for example. It's not old at all. So there's less of a body of knowledge around that people, actors included, can tap into to demystify what's involved, right? If I want to know about theater, well, I've trained in theater, so I know all the ins and outs. Film, I've watched hundreds, thousands of movies. I could take a film acting course. I can read a book, watch a video, talk to other actors. The mocap is still much more niche because not as many people, do it as those other two disciplines. So I find whenever I find myself in a coaching or teaching position with people who are new to that medium, a lot of the blocks is just people not knowing what they can and can't do. And their habits that were formed either in theater or film can actually be counterproductive in a mocap environment, right? Like, I remember I was just coaching someone, they had a monologue to do or a scene, and, they wouldn't turn more than 2/3, 3/4 when talking and interacting, even though the person's behind them, the imaginary person's behind them, because on stage, you never turn your back to the audience. 3/4 is as much as you can do. And on film, you don't turn your back to the camera, right? You actually, in film, you don't move at all. If you're in a close-up, you got to just, keep it tight. That's the freedom you have in mocap. I could deliver a monologue lying on my back and we could still use it. You know what I mean? I mean, that probably hide a lot of my markers, but my point is you can do things that are unusual. You can turn around. There is no camera. The camera is virtual. They bring in the camera afterwards. You know what I mean? So, when people realize, oh my God, like it kind of unlocks in their minds and they start getting all these creative ideas like, oh, I could do this. I could go here. I could try this. It's actually closer to realism, to truth. You know what I mean? Like something that I find so ridiculous is the soap opera turn, right? When one person turns to someone and they're both facing the camera, the person behind them's talking to them. And I get it for technical reasons why that's a thing. But I'm pretty sure no two people ever in the history of mankind have had a conversation that way, right? But it's a thing you do out of necessity. So there's just a lot less of that in mocap, and consequently, I think it's a lot more freeing. It's just not all actors are aware of the freedom they have. But now, because, like I said, technology is so sharp now, you can just go be yourself, do a natural performance, and the tech will do all the work for you.
Yeah, sharp and also just less. I don't know. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Like you're not as encumbered while trying to perform.
Right. I mean, you still have the helmet that can weigh, not necessarily weigh a lot, but it throws off your center of gravity, makes you aware of other actors if you're close, not to be smacking heads together. You know?
Exactly. And there's like a camera right here. So like you try to like hug somebody and you're like hugging them like this.
You actually have to choreograph that stuff to make sure not to bang your cameras together. But that's just technical stuff that you work around. Just like, in theater, you got to hit your light. You know what I mean? So you hit your light. You learn to make it part of your natural performance. And the camera, you got to be in frame, hit your mark. Same thing. It's just part of being a naturalistic actor is incorporating that. So, you get used to that pretty quickly. And then the rest is fairly simple, I would say.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were at some point dreading the days that say, oh, is there a helmet today? Oh, okay. It means uncomfortable. It got way better. But obviously, I'm assuming that helmet meant, acting, and no helmet meant more like a stunt day. And you're actually doing both really well. But I was always curious, do you consider yourself a stunt actor with good acting skills, or an actor that is actually physical enough to be able to do the stunt as well?
I'd say the second one. Not to disparage my stunt skills, but my stunt ability is more limited. Like, I'm friends with some stuntmen, and these guys are, they're super impressive. They'll do, hanging off of a car and jumping from vehicle to vehicle. They're harness work, going through, glass that'll shatter.
Next level stuff.
Falling downstairs, getting hit by cars. I would never do any of that stuff because I like life and like being alive. It's super fun to be alive. So my stunt ability comes more from my connection with my body, my physicality. I've always been a fairly physical person, and I did tumbling and stuff like that, movement in theater school, and combined with my martial arts experience. I studied martial arts for many years, got my black belt in karate, did a few competitions, and then I got into fight choreography right after school, which I fell in love with, still love like crazy. So anything to do with fighting, and then anything related to that, so weapon use, either swords and shields and spears and axes, or firearms. I've had the chance through different Ubisoft games to work with ex SWAT guy, or guy who works for the SQ but who used to be an army ranger type of thing, and show us how to clear a room and how to move as a squad and stuff like that, which then adds to my repertoire of skills. So I definitely, also if I look at where do I act, where do I work more, it's definitely on the acting side of things.
Okay.
Back in the day, before ACTRA had too much of a distinction between stunt and acting and stunt days, and the requirements like we need to have a paramedic on set and we need to have a fight coordinator on stunt days. Various productions at various places I've worked with. It's not like one studio was a culprit here. Everybody did it, and I was willing to do it. It would be like, here's all day you're going to play a guard who's, walking and shoving that merchant and arresting that guy and standing looking bored. But at the end of the day, can you, get shot in the neck with an arrow and fall off this horse onto this mat, or, do a quick little fight scene with this guy. And to me, there was no distinction. I'm like, yeah, sure. These are all part of my skill set. So I do it. Today, that would be very much separated,
Hmm.
which again, I find a little unfortunate. Again, for people like me, because I can be hired to do both, but usually they'll be like, well, it's okay. We can hire an actor who doesn't know what the hell he's doing in terms of fighting, because we'll do a stunt day anyway. We'll do a stunt layer, and we'll just get that actor's action done by someone who's competent at fighting, and that we can risk. Because I understand from a production standpoint, you don't want to force someone who can't do stuff to do stuff. So I'm kind of hoping in the future to book more parts like that based on my ability to be a good actor, but also to be a very, physical actor. And I'm sure that's a factor. And I mean, I had a chance to do that really not too long ago at all. I was working on Watch Dogs Bloodline, the DLC for Legion, because they brought Wrench back for a storyline, which was such a great time. And I went to Toronto to film that at the Ubisoft stage in Toronto. And, I had a chance to talk to the stunt coordinator and be like, look, and they had stunt days planned that didn't involve me, but I had to be back in town for another gig. So I don't know if it's because they didn't want me to do them or if it's because I wasn't available. I think it was a bit of both. But once I spoke to the stunt guy and he got to know me a bit, and I told him what I could do, what I couldn't do, he's like, I trust you. You sound like you know what you're talking about. You know your limitations, which is super important as well. Let's get you in as much as you're comfortable. So there I got to do my stunts mostly, getting knocked around, a quick little fight scene with Aiden, fighting the bad guy at the end, dive rolling into cover, beating a guy up with a sledgehammer. And for me, this stuff was thrilling and kind of second nature, because I do a lot of dive rolling in my everyday life, and swinging sledgehammers at people. But what was... Sorry.
Anytime you hurt yourself badly in any shoots?
No, I have never
Oh, wow.
injured myself doing a stunt. I have been injured doing mocap, and usually it's because we did something no one bothered to consider a stunt, and that's when injury happens. So when I do something that I know is dangerous, I have a very different approach, and it safeguards me and the actors around me. I'm really can honestly say that I've never, ever been injured doing a stunt. But at one point, we fudged the rules, or we didn't realize what we were doing was dangerous. And, I broke my fingers once. And some other point, I, hurt myself a little. Never anything major. But
that's particularly impressive because I think my most famous moment ever during any kind of stunt shoot, we were filming like a reference one day, and I was a bunch of stuff being done at a kind of local gym, and I was just running around with an iPhone camera, just trying to like capture things. I was down on the mats, I was moving around. I was the only one that day that injured myself. I had dislocated my small toe because I got up too quickly. And then meanwhile, everybody else in the room were literally doing flips and rolls and like literally tackling one another through walls. And they look at me, they're like, Brant, really? Like, really? Like, really? And I'm like, well, that's why you guys get paid the money to do these things. And I should stay really far over here on the sidelines because I'm a liability, basically.
But that's when it happens, when you're not thinking along.
100%.
It's safety is really a question of mentality, approaching something as though it's dangerous versus thinking it's fine, I'm not going to get injured. I guess the biggest takeaway from the story is what still advantages me as an actor having stunt experience and being comfortable doing stunts is even if they can't use me, I can still inform the team, if they're willing to work with me, on how they could use me, but like my choices, how to translate my choices as an actor into a performance from a stuntman. So there was a bit on a drone where Wrench is fighting this guy Aiden on a drone, and the drone's flying through the city, and they made this great big like floating stage thingy on like a gimbal, and it would like move. So the actors on it were actually, and I can see why that's dangerous, and you wouldn't want me. Get on up there, Shawn. Hopefully don't break your neck, But what I did is I went through the scene with the stunt coordinator and the guy who was going to play Wrench for me in the stunt scene. And, I just walked them through it. I'm like, okay, well here, if I was getting choked, Wrench would be like, hold on. Like he'd do like a timeout thing. That'd be pretty funny. He'd react this way. He'd do this. He'd say that. In this scene, if he's getting knocked down, he'd probably do, So I informed them with how I would play it if I were doing the stunt. And I got to say, they did the day without me being there. And when I saw the footage afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. Like everything I told them, they incorporated, and I could barely even tell the difference. Like it wasn't this jarring contrast between some guy who's never seen me, never known me, never seen my work, and me doing the stunt. So it certainly has its advantages. I still get hired on occasion to choreograph stuff. And sometimes when I do stuff that's like lower budget or has less room for different personnel, I can wear two hats, actor and stunt fighter, or fight choreographer or coordinator.
Yeah.
So it serves me, but I am primarily an actor.
You kind of queued up a really good topic to segue to, which is, of course, something you probably did get to wear multiple hats on. It would be the more recent short film that you made.
Yes. So thank you for asking about that, Brian. So I had a chance to work on something really great in October. I was actually just coaching someone yesterday for they're starting up their acting career and they wanted some advice. And I was telling them the value of independent film and small budget works. I'm like, careful not to be exploited, of course, but it's valuable to you as an actor to get experience on set and to get, connections, to fail at certain things, to learn from that. There's a lot of value there. It might not be monetary value, but it'll be experience, which to me is worth way more than money. But, and as you progress in your career, you tend to do less and less of those, because what's in it for you, the exchange tends to not be as great. Someone's like, hey, can you come for a 12-hour day on set? We'll pay you $150 to play like a security guard, because we know you're a physical guy and you'd be great. I'm like, thank you. I'm really flattered, but oh, you'll get demo material. I'm like, I have demo material and my time's worth more than $150 for 12 hours. You know what I mean? So it's kind of I don't want to sound arrogant and say, the more successful you are as an actor, the less you have to work with people who aren't, part of big budget things. I mean, art is art, right? But the point of this rambling story is this guy I'd worked with, I think a few years ago, he was trying to do like a Batman short film. So I kind of worked with him to consult with how to approach the violence and all that stuff. And then he went on to become like a director in his own right. And he wrote this film. And he made a bunch of films. And he wrote the script for a film called Wraith, which is like this really, really cool, atmospheric, dark, kind of moody, very ethereal short film about this Viking warrior who goes on this quest. So he wrote to me and he's like, look, I'm shooting this film. I'd love you to play the main character. I think your energies and sensibilities would be perfect for this. So I said, send me the script. I'll let you know what I think. I read the script. I loved it. So I'm like, absolutely. I will absolutely do this. Because, I don't always do what I do for money. Money is nice to have. I like, eating and paying my mortgage. But I got into this in the first place to act, to create, to connect with different characters, to create art, to bring it to other people's lives and, help tell stories. So this really meshed with me. So, it was going to be over a weekend and they respected my time. They respected, they did the best they could. And I understand that with the means they have. So in those cases, like I'm 100% on board. I would never be one of those like, guys, where's my trailer? And bring me some avocado toast, please. That being said, like we froze our butts off because we shot this in October in this beautiful forest up in Mirabel and Arundel. So long days, and I've got patchwork Viking armor on, so I'm not at all warm. So I got like a jacket over me and just kind of, but all that gets pushed to the side when you're doing something you love. We shot some amazing, amazing footage. I got to work with some really talented actors. Sam, the director, and his whole crew were fantastic. And I saw actually a little bit of footage from it and some stills a couple weeks ago, and it looks fantastic.
When is it due to come out?
So they're aiming to release it in the fall.
Okay.
On the festival circuit. So as soon as it's accessible to anyone, I will absolutely talk about it on my socials, make sure people know. I don't want to jump the gun, but it so far it's looking like it might be one of the better things I've done from an indie standpoint.
That's exciting.
So
Very
that's
cool.
really, really nice. So that little picture of me on the thumbnail for this discussion, me looking a little worse for wear with blood in my face, looking kind of serious. That tells you everything you need to know about the film. And
in some cases, everything you need to know about Shawn, because that's like a sort of normal
I was just
day
playing myself, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
So is there an element, Shawn, that in terms of preference between the all the mocap work that we're doing in the performance capture work for video game and this type of work that is a little bit more indie, that you don't have all of the gear of the mocap and all that, do you have a preference, or for you it's more a matter of doing a lot of different things to not be bored with doing the same thing over and over?
That's another great question. I wish I had the kind of career where I could make choices because I was bored. I'd love to be there. But no, I think my personal approach to acting, to performance as an actor is versatility, right? I mean, you said so yourself in your intro, and I mean, that is my brand, is I'm fairly competent at a number of different disciplines, whether it's fighting, acting for stage or film or television, whether it's video games, mocap, performance capture, dubbing, original voice for animation, voice work, teaching, coaching, all that stuff. Like I've diversified my skills as an actor over time. And, so I find that's as good an insurance I can have against the absolute volatility of the industry and what I do. I mean, there was a time all I did was work at Ubisoft, and I absolutely loved it. And if that was my job, most of the time, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. But, projects end, and I don't blame companies for not just continuously working with me in the same capacity for every project. I mean, as a consumer, I wouldn't want that. Like, oh, this guy again. God damn it.
Shawn fatigue.
But that's it. See, there it is. But at the same time, I think I can diversify myself enough that I always have some appeal in some way to certain, types of media. So, let's say Ubisoft said, well, we're leaving Montreal. We're going to go to wherever, to Vancouver, and we're shutting that down. Like, I wouldn't want to be like, oh, I can't be an actor anymore, because that's 99% of my work. You know what I mean? And every time something like calms down a bit, it kind of opens me up to try other things. Like I recently started voice directing, which is something I've always wanted to do, always thought I'd be good at, but never had the opportunity, because how do you get that opportunity where someone's going to give you that much responsibility? But I got hired to teach a class at a studio. They really liked me as a teacher, and they liked me as a performer because I've been working there for years in various projects. So I think they're like, this guy's probably be a pretty good teacher. They asked me, do you teach? I said, not voice, but I've taught stage combat and fight choreography, and I've taught movement and a whole bunch of stuff over the years. So it's just a different subject. I know how to teach, and so they gave me a shot. It worked great. I taught a few classes, and then I've done 2 projects now that I've been a director for. And did great.
Do you like it?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, my understanding of the art of voice acting has grown in parallel to my ability, right? Because I've been doing it for 20 years now. So, and I used to have this almost this mental block, which I had back in the day when I started teaching stunt fighting, which was this little voice in my head was saying, you can't teach. You're not qualified to teach. No one taught you to teach. You didn't study teaching. Who are you to say you can do that? Yeah. But then I'm like, okay, but he's teaching and he's terrible. And I can do better than that guy. Come on, right?
So that's how you dealt with your own imposter syndrome.
Pretty much. I guess that's a really good way.
Hey, I might not be great, but I'm probably better than him, and he's teaching.
Exactly. So when it came to voice acting and directing that, it was the same thing, except that voice is gone now. I'm like, yeah, no, I know myself. I know what I can handle. And then I'll have a session, and by the end, I'm like, yeah, I clearly know what I'm talking about. And the client's happy, the directors, and the person who hired me is happy. Everybody's happy and giving me praise after and saying you did a great job.
Yeah.
That's all
Wait a minute.
great
Wait a
I
second.
need.
I have a really important question. Did I hear you just say that you killed that voice in your head that says that causes you to doubt yourself? Because I
I
mean,
said it's no longer there. I didn't
oh,
say
okay,
what I did with
just,
it.
it's just hiding in the shadows.
It's waiting for the
Because
perfect
I was gonna
moment.
say I want to know how you did that, but
Let's just say my voice had a little tumble down the stairs and no one's asking any questions. All right, guys?
Yeah, because Brent is still asking himself if his voice qualifies to be a good podcaster. So that's
it.
that's probably the little.
I can tell you with certainty it does, Brent. I think you
that's very
have
nice.
a melodious and mellifluous voice, sir. And
That's
I
very
for
kind
one,
of
am a
you.
fan. I also don't use the word mellifluous often.
So you reserve that for special occasions
just for
such as
you,
this.
my friend.
I think it's officially the first time that this word was used in our podcast.
Yes.
So thank you for this first,
Podcast
Sean.
first.
I'll have to Google it after the end of this podcast. But I mean, directing and coaching and teaching seems to be a natural progression for most artists and entertainer in general. And it kind of make me think is so obviously you're still young and filled with energy, but does aging kind of influence a little bit some of your stunt work or your preparation for it or the aftermath of big stunt section? How does this play in the equation of how you prepare for stunt and how it might impact your career moving forward?
Really hitting me with the killer questions today.
Yeah.
David. I love it, man. It's great. This guy's done his
He's
research.
not going to be happy till you cry, so just prepare yourself.
Shawn, what's it like to be really old? How do you deal with that? That's a tremendous question, and it's your timing is perfect because I literally had a day of mocap on Friday. I can't talk about the project, but it was fairly high impact.
Oh, boy.
I find I have one of two types of sessions of mocap. It's either you're a guard who's doing an idol, you're a merchant, you're just hanging out.
So the boring shoot.
But no, I love those just as much actually.
Okay.
But like I've literally had scenes where I'm sleeping. So I'm like, that's about as low impact as you can get. You know what I mean? Broke my leg sleeping. But the other type of day is like, okay, you're running as fast as you can and you're crouching and you're doing dynamic starts and stops, and then you're doing a ninja routine. And here's, that's actually another way that my stunt training helps me is I can still use them on days that aren't stunts. If it's like, okay, it's an emote and the guy has a katana. Can you do something cool? I'm like, sure, I can. I'll pull the katana out and flip it around and do a thing. And, we got that. And that's lovely. I love people hiring me for that stuff, especially. But so I had a day that was like super high impact, running and just crouching and just really jumping around all day long. And I got through it, no problem. I was tired at the end, but then the next day I wake up and I'm like, oh boy, my back is sore and my shoulder's really sore. I'm like, why is my shoulder so sore? I'm like, oh, because I was swinging that axe 100 times. That's why. So my recovery is maybe a little slower now than it was. But something I pride myself on. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's my. Go ahead. You keep going.
But something I pride myself on is the older I get, the more I tend to focus on my health, which means, staying fit, staying flexible, self-care too, to handle the rigors of what I love doing best in my career. And I have scoliosis. I've had it my whole life. One of my legs is a little like offset from the other height-wise. So I have to wear like orthotics in my shoes. I herniated a disc in my back a few months before we shot Watch Dogs 2, which was one of the worst injuries I've ever had in my life. So I had to heal and work through that and work with her, which is fine. We got through it. I've dealt with a host of like setbacks physically. But by staying fit, watching what I eat, making sure I work out on a regular basis and all that stuff, taking care of myself, I've managed to stave off the worst of it. And when I do get injured, I learn from that injury. Like when I herniated my disc in my back, I learned all sorts of things about my spinal column and my pelvic floor and exercises to strengthen that stuff. And it changed my attitude towards health and fitness. But honestly, I have to say, like now, I'm almost in better shape than I was 10 years ago. Because I'm aware of my weaknesses and I've built up strengths around them.
Makes sense.
And I never want to be in the position where I can't physically do something I want to do, right? That's also why I stay away from things like, harness work or getting hit by cars or falling downstairs, because pragmatically speaking, I don't know if I'd be able to handle that as easily. If I think about when I was 22 and doing a play where I'm fighting ninjas and guy socks me in the face and I do like a backward flip and land on my back and then do a kip up and then keep fighting. And I could do that not because I was well trained, but I could do that because I was 22. My body was like, whatever,
exactly.
It's fine. You'll be fine in 10 minutes. Now I got to think a bit more and go, I'm not going to recover from that. Or I could get hurt doing this. So, I don't want to labor under some kind of delusion of like, I'm going to be able to do this forever. I realize the window on that is probably shrinking a little. But also with the advance of, information, medical science, nutrition.
Medical science.
It's true.
We can rebuild him.
Well, maybe we'll have nanobots when I'm 70 and then I can do stunts again. I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm saying, but by progressing with the times and being smart about it, I'm more someone who goes, okay, I can't eat 3 cookies anymore because it'll give me heartburn and it makes me feel weird and it's not good for me. And so I'll just cut down on that, as opposed to other people I know who are my age and who are like, screw it. I'll feel like crap, or I'll gain weight, or I'll whatever, and I'll just won't treat myself well. So if you can listen to your body as you get older and hear what it's saying to you and make adjustments in function of that, there's a reason why I'm still so energetic and have this energy, even though I'm pretty much right on the cusp of middle age now. It's because I've allowed myself to kind of always be in that state throughout my life. I'm going to have a naturally high metabolism and a pretty energetic guy to begin with. But that's one of my fears, is I don't want to become like that. I got to give up a part of my life and just become sedentary, or, become unhappy or stagnant or something because of, injury, or because I wasn't careful. So that's what I'm trying to. I'm staving off entropy, I guess.
It's staving off one stunt job at a time.
Exactly.
I have a story that I relate to with regards to that, sort of the very high impact shoot that you did, and then you feel sore the next day. But this story will probably make you feel a little bit better. The other day, I bent down to pick up a toy of my daughter's, and then the next day I couldn't walk. So I mean, I'm just saying, basically. I think you're doing pretty good.
I've been there. Like I don't have a daughter, but I walked out in the yard a couple of years ago to pick up my dog's ball to throw it for her, and my back.
I'll take sometimes.
Nope.
Yeah. No. Instead, you're going to lay on the grass for about an hour.
And then I had a cane for 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
My body was all like crooked, and I got all this inflammation in my lower back. And I mean,
my God,
that's the kind of thing I try to prevent, is injuring myself. Like one of my big fears is I'm going to get booked to do something pretty physical and then tweak my back a day before.
Yeah.
And then be like, guys, I literally cannot fake not being injured. But that's why when I work out, I focus on my core, on my lower back, on my flexibility, on leg adduction and abduction. Like these are all terms I've learned of muscle movements and groups, which is boring for the average, like power lifter, let's get jacked kind of guys. But that's not the point of working out for me. It's I need to preserve my body as much as possible so I can be available to do the things I want to do.
Yeah, and you kind of take it for granted when you're in good physical shape, and especially when you're younger. It's just like when you don't feel your body, you don't think about it, and then you get hurt. And obviously, it especially for someone that is doing physical work like you are doing, it's super important. But I think that for any professional artists, maybe more in you mentioned having the right energy and all that, but there's so much about motivation and inspiration and this energy that relies on what you're eating, how much are you sleeping, are you exercising, are you in good mental health, or are you stressed at all times. So I think as you said, we're getting close to this middle age part, and that's the moment that you're like, oh, I don't have the energy that I had before. Why is that? And then you start to be more and careful with yourself. And as you mentioned, you might be in better physical shape now that you were 10 years ago because you started to pay attention to it.
Exactly.
But I think that that's the same thing, even for those that would not be just purely physically, but in terms of energy, it's something that you can regain. Let's say in your 30s, you realize that, I don't have this energy I had in my 20s. Well, be careful, work on it, do all of those things. And yes, by 40, you can definitely find again the energy that you had at 20 years old.
Well, that's it. And I don't want people to think, there seems to be, I've come across this a lot, people I know, which is this mentality of like, well, I'm getting older. What do you want to do? I'm like, well, you can make different choices. You can choose to value your health over other things. Really only thing stopping you is habit, right? Like, well, I don't go to the gym. Well, start or find something you enjoy. That doesn't have to be the gym. It could be walking, cycling, jogging, swimming, squash, whatever. Like you talk about energy, it's how much energy you have is really a function of all the choices you make in your life. If you're working 2 jobs and you don't have any time for yourself, you're going to be tired. If you never have time for self-care, you're going to be tired. I was doing a guest speaker spot last week for this acting school, and someone asked me a really interesting question. She said, like, can you take me through like what your day is like, what an average day is for someone like you? And I was like, oh, that's so I went through like an average, like they differed based on if I'm working that day or not. But on a day I'm not working, like, I get up and then I work out. Then I usually fast for the morning, and I'll spend some time watching a bit of YouTube in the morning. I'll have my coffee, and then I'll make breakfast, and then I'll work from 1 to 5. So I have like 4 to 5 hours a day on like emails or scripts or whatever, and then I'll cook dinner with my wife and I'll blah blah blah. And as I'm saying that, I'm like, I hope people don't think I sound like some kind of like, I barely work and I just play video games all day and life is easy. Like, because that's not it at all, right? But at the same time, I've also made all these choices in my life that support me being able to have that kind of time. And to me, it's essential, because if my life was just 9 to 5 every day, work with no change in the future to that, I would panic and I wouldn't know what to do, because I would find that mortifying. Like, people go, how do you do it as an actor? Like, you never know when you're going to work again. Like, how do you cope with that? And I'm like, well, to me, that's part of the thrill, is I never know what's coming in my life. I mean, sure, it could be bad things, but try to be a positive person. Last 2 years ago, I wouldn't have ever thought that I'd get an email one day going, hey, we're going to do another thing with Wrench in this new Watch Dogs thing, DLC. Do you want to come and reprise the role? And you come to Toronto and we'll put you up for 2 weeks and you'll shoot. And it's a dream come true for an actor. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that just came out of the ether. I wasn't like trying to knock on their door and say, make another Wrench game. I need to pay my rent. But that came along, and it was perfect timing, and it was such a beautiful, it was a gift to me as far as I'm concerned. It was like someone was handing me this gift that I cherished, and I did the best I could with, and it turned out great, So that's what keeps me going, is like, I could get a call 5 minutes from, well, not 5 minutes from now, because I'll be talking to you guys, but I could get a call or an email by the end of the day, which is, you have this audition coming up, and it could change my life. You know what I mean? So that just kind of keeps me on my toes too. But if I didn't take time out of my day to enjoy myself, right? Spend time with my wife, or play a video game, or walk my dog, or do a project, I don't think I'd be as prolific as an actor, because I just wouldn't be happy. And I bring my joy and my passion to my work. You know what I mean? So to me, that's part of my self-care as I get older, is to section off leisure time for myself, so that I can refocus and prioritize the things I want to get done, and then do them.
Hearing you say that, it makes it seem like what you're saying in a way is that you and your own happiness and your own sort of health is sort of, you kind of create your own muse in a way. Like, it's like you, like, it's interesting. There's like a balance that you're trying to sort of suggest here about, like, people say that artists need a muse, and it's like, well, why can't your muse just be taking care of yourself? You know what I mean? Like, and being happy. And then, so when you go to the job to be creative, you are truly able to,
That's a really good way of putting it, Brent. And like, I think it's something I have trouble expressing depending who I'm talking to, because it can sound arrogant or full of myself. But like, I really, really, really do love and value myself, right? I think I am talented and funny, and that I have a lot of value in a lot of different ways. Not
You're
at all
okay.
or ever
You're
to the
okay.
point where I think I'm better than anyone, but not enough people embrace their value, right? Like so many people think like that little voice, no, you're not allowed to think that, or you can't be that person. I haven't felt this way my whole life. 20 years ago, less than that, I was like, oh, I don't deserve this, and I'm never going to make it, and I don't. It's just, I almost find it now, it'd almost be silly of me or disingenuous to look back on everything I've achieved and go, no, I don't deserve, I'm not, like, dude, Wrench, you did this, people like you, it's fine. You can own it a bit, that's fine.
And
so
there's
owning that is important to me, and I think more people should do it.
Yeah, there's something you mentioned that was super interesting, that as you were describing your day to this audience, you became self-aware to the point that, oh my God, I almost feel bad because I described a joyful day instead of,
exactly.
And it's almost like we have culturally this mindset that, oh, I need to look like I'm working super hard and, I don't have it
miserable.
easy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe not to the point of being miserable, but I need to project that I'm working really. And I think that this is slowly starting with a lot of, mental issues with anxiety and burnout and depression that might, in an extreme, lead to there, that we are culturally, at least in our industry, I've noticed that we start to have those conversations, and it's like, and one of the things that, and we're talking about the 4 days work week, and we're talking about 6 weeks of paid vacation, and we're starting on more and more people that expect, what, I'm going to provide you my full time, and that's 32 hours a week. And this is what I'm comfortable with. And unfortunately, if there's overtime, most of the time, I'm sorry, but I'll have to decline. I'm not in a position that I'll be able to. And why do you all that is to find your own sweet spot when you're going to be, mentally comfortable for the long run, and stay motivated and inspired. And those hours that you're going to provide are going to be good hours, instead of just being a zombie in front of whatever you are doing. So I think there's a stigma that we're, and even now that's why I laughed a little bit, because what you mentioned is almost like, oh my God, I'm describing a day that is joyful for me. I feel bad about it. What is that?
Exactly. And, I don't want people to get the wrong impression either. Like, when I work, you know what I mean? So when I had a day of mocap on Friday, it's not just I show up, I fart around for 8 hours and I leave. It's, well, I get the script in advance. I study it. I go over it. I write down any questions I have. I get reference videos for moves they want me to learn, for emotes or whatever. So I watch the videos. I learn them. I practice them in my own spare time at home. It's part of my work day. I make sure I get there on time. So I make sure I get up early enough that I know the trajectory to get into town, because I moved. I live up north now, so it's longer. I want to make sure I'm on time because I'm a professional. When I'm there, I'm present. I'm committed. I ask questions if I need to. Like, they're getting me at 150%. So when I'm home and I'm like kicking back and, playing something on my PlayStation, I don't feel guilty. Like, well, I didn't give it my all. I don't deserve this. Like, I'll be home. I'll be tired, but I feel satisfied that I gave my absolute best. They're happy. I'm happy. And then I get my reward. You know what I mean? It's you can have a reward system too, just this grinding nonstop, thinking, oh, I'll stop grinding when I'm 65, and then I'm going to really start enjoying life when I've got, shot back or cancer or something, an illness or whatever. Like, I don't want to wind up like that. I'd rather take my retirement in increments now. I can.
I like
and
that
just
idea.
plan to keep working till I'm 80. You know what I mean? Which is something else I have the option as an actor, is to keep working even though I'm past, once I get past retirement age.
So, Shawn, we are getting towards the end of the stream, so we're going to go
Sure.
some Q&A from the chat. But before they do, there was one that I wanted to ask. So let's start this Q&A session with my own question. Favorite role or work that you had in your career, or let's say the first one that comes to mind, but most importantly, why was it your favorite role?
Well, I don't want to insult you guys because I worked with you both. If I don't say
we don't count. You
I don't say
use
Tomb
us.
Raider. Maybe it's a bit of a predictable answer, but I think I'd have to say Wrench in Watch Dogs 2 and
I had a
Legion,
feeling.
just because I've never in my life as an actor had an opportunity to invest myself to that level in a character. All my sensibilities, my loves, my comedic timing, my energy, my love of pop culture, my nerd badge, every aspect of me gets magnified through Wrench, and I really get to just be myself. But one of my friends once put it this way, which I think is a very accurate description of Wrench, which is Wrench is me without any filters, right? So, and he's kind of right, awesome. You know what I mean? Like I have some different sensibilities from Wrench, but overall, his sense of humor and what he likes and dislikes and how he interacts with people is just a magnification of who I am, without consequence, if you will, because he's fictional. I can't be that way in real life, nor would I want to be. So the freedom he brought me to play and express was super rewarding. And then the reaction people had to him was even more rewarding because, you know, they love Wrench, and by extension, they also love me and what I brought to it. And Wrench has brought me into contact with so many cool people, interesting people on Twitter, artists and streamers and gamers and fans. And it's expanded my world in a way that I never thought I'd experienced as an actor. And I love it. I love having this community that supports me and that I can talk to. And, you know, I get credit for other things I do, like Lion or the Outlast series, for example, or even some Assassin's Creed stuff. But Wrench was, I'd have to say, probably the standout performance of my career. And, you know, it was strong enough. Ubisoft was like, let's spend several thousands, I don't know how much it costs to make a video game, but a ton of money to make a DLC, money. And we'll center it around your character for half of it. And we're going to take this gamble on you, except it's not really a gamble because you've proven the character is popular. So let's cash in on that. So, I mean, if I look at actors or other people I look up to have iconic characters they've played in their career, like I could really point to Wrench and a few others that I've done as being that. And I think that's a pretty big achievement as an actor and something I'm probably most proud of. So yeah, I'd say Wrench would take the cake on that one.
Just an FYI for people in chat, I did drop a really cool YouTube link of a nice little spotlight that they did. I think Games Radar was the website that put this together, or at least the YouTube channel. It was it was meet the man behind Wrench, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool video. It's a nice short one. It's like 5 minutes, but there's a lot of other great videos breaking that down. If you're so inclined to look up Wrench from Watch Dogs making of. Lots of good
But
stuff.
in that video, you get to see just how much of a nerd I am.
That's it.
So,
That's it.
I recommend it to people who want to get to know me
when
that
you
way.
said it wrenches you without a filter, I'm like, people need to see this video, basically.
Yeah, well put.
Well, I should probably go dig into the questions here, probably. Sure. We got lots. They're kind of coming in. I'll
keep my answers short so we can get to a lot of them.
Okay, well, yeah, there's a good number. There's like 8 in there already, I think. So what's your... Okay, let me bring it up, actually, so everyone can see it. What's your favorite protagonist on the Outlast saga?
That's a tough one. I'll split my answer. From a story perspective, I think Miles, the first one, also because it was new to the genre, so I think he had a bigger impact. But Blake was probably more interesting for me to play because Miles I just did voice, but Blake I did voice and the mocap for him. And separately, I also got to come in and play most of the residents of Templegate. So all the weird, messed up, monstery, weird people, it's me doing the mocap, which was a huge, really cool challenge for me. And I got to shoot an orgy scene alone in that game, which is one of my favorite stories. So I'd have to say Blake.
Did you just use orgy and alone in the same sentence?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, all right.
They had an orgy happening. I'll give you the
we have the technology.
This is what you hired me for, guys. No, there's a scene where my character comes across an orgy, and they're like, Shawn, can you... I'm like, you got it! Roll camera! And I'm like, giving it to myself, and then, top and bottom, like I had to,
when I said versatile, versatile, I was not kidding.
And this is one of my so I would like do all the different parts, and I remember this clearly. They're like, okay, Shawn, I think we got wait, no, hold on, wait, this guy could be doing this, and then this could be a girl. She's doing this. Yeah. Oh, how about they're doing this to each other? And I'm like,
call the police.
Put up on this. No shame.
Amazing.
Like, we definitely got enough material there, and I heard the scene turned out well. So
That's amazing.
Blake brings that with it too. So yeah, there you go.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, so what else we got here? That was one of my very first TMI moments on the stream. It was good.
A lot of firsts today with me, guys. Like, we're never having him on again. He used mellifluous. God,
Yeah.
what's wrong with him?
Who uses that word? Okay, so first question. I guess this probably, maybe they posted it first at everybody else. They beat everyone to the punch. Shawn, are you drinking coffee or tea mid-interview? Serious question,
coffee.
by the way.
It is coffee.
There. It is coffee.
Hi, Rina Ryu. I know this follower. How's it going?
Yeah, you got a bunch of fans in here. Actually, they've been very, very talkative. It's awesome to have you all here. By the way,
community. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It is coffee. It is yes, coffee.
Coffee's a black.
No,
cream,
there's
2 sugars,
a bit of milk and then some stevia.
Okay,
so talk about healthy choices. I use
specifics.
stevia instead of sugar.
Good move. Okay, next up. Oh wait, we've already answered that question, so I'm going to skip that. Was what was your favorite question ever voice / mocapped? I think you just said that was Wrench. How about this one right here? This is one from our very own Scott. Shawn, how would you direct an actor that is struggling with performing mocap for the first time and don't have the stimulation of a physical set or a costume?
That is a terrific question. When I talk about the limitations of mocap that people don't know, people kind of impose on themselves, there's also benefits you get from the adjacent arts of film and theater. One of them, the most important one, is in theater, you have to do something called creating the space, right? So when you're on stage, if I'm on stage and I'm on a beach, I know I'm not on a beach because there's 100 people in front of me in an auditorium, and the back wall is just a riser, a flat made out of plywood. So I have to smell the salt air, feel the sun on my face, hear the gulls, see them passing above me, feel the sand in my toes. How will the heat affect how I move and how will I walk? And I got to create that space. And if I do it in a realistic way, I'm going to transport the audience who's there to that reality with me. In film, if I have to do that scene on a beach, I'm going to be on a beach, right? So all those factors, I don't have to think about them. They're there automatically. So you have to do that a lot in mocap. You have to create the space because you'll have an even more minimal set than theater or film on mocap. It's just the volume. It's just a couple objects here and there that represent, if you use that box, that's a throne. And later that box is like a merchant stall. And that box is a bench, right? So you have to create your environment and really build the scenario around you. Like David, when we worked on Tomb Raider stuff, we often had like previs stuff, right? So it'd be like low-grade animation, but that would show like, here's the cave and these are the stairs, and the chief will come down the stairs, and this is the pit, and there's stalactites here, and there's some cargo here. So then you kind of build that in your mind, and you can interact with that stuff when you're doing it. So I would say feel free to use and create your environment. Ask questions if you don't know what the specifics are. But a good example of being creative and with space that's ill-defined, not ill-defined, but that has some room for interpretation, is we were actually during a Tomb Raider shoot. At one point, Lara comes up to a wall and she kind of puts her pick in the wall and kind of loosens some bricks, and a whole bunch of stuff falls down, a whole bunch of bricks, revealing like a plaque or a statue behind the wall. And I remember, like, as we're shooting the scene, Amber, who was your guest a few weeks ago, Amber, I turned to her and I was like, oh, well, we should stand back when we pull the last brick out because it's all going to collapse and we don't want to get hit with the bricks. And then we do so and we're like, and we're coughing and waving our hand through the air because there would be dust that would be, So that's what I mean by creating the space is you interact with things maybe that's not in the script or that's not thought of, but if you're there, you'll react to that imaginary space in a realistic way. And I remember hearing later that the animators were really happy with that work. Like, oh, now we can do particle effects and have dust. And they gave more life to the environment for us to interact with. You know what I mean?
They didn't have much of a choice. I just imagine what would happen if they shipped it. You guys are just like
Yeah.
stepping away from nothing and just like
Oh.
coughing at pure air.
Thanks, Sean. We have to add a week
Yeah,
of
that's-
VFX now.
Yeah, that's right. Shawn Baichoo, otherwise known as Shawn Feature Creep Baichoo.
Sean,
basically.
I'm doing overtime tonight. Baichoo,
Yeah,
thanks a
that's
lot.
right.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Oh man, it's amazing. Let's see here. How about? Oh, here's a very specific one. Who's your number one most favorite video game character? Oh, what the heck? I did clicked on the wrong one. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Oh yeah, it
Continue.
is. No, yeah, it's right. Just it's not
wow.
someone you acted.
That's a tough one. God, that's really hard. I just really tough. I'm trying to think of my favorite games ever and who were the protagonists. I'd have to probably split down a draw between Master Chief, because I'm a huge Halo fan from back in the day, and Geralt, because I'm also a massive Witcher 3 fan, and I think the actor who voiced Geralt did a terrific job, and Geralt's a really
Totally.
interesting character. So there's probably lots of other video game characters that have inspired me that are going like, oh, how dare you! But yeah, those will be my choices for now, I guess. Geralt and Master Chief.
Follow-up question: how did you feel about Witcher the series?
I wasn't a fan.
Interesting.
I don't want to get into a whole thing, but I like Henry Cavill's casting. I think he's terrific. And actually, when I heard he was playing Geralt, I was like, "What? It's getting a little warm in here." I mean, he's kind of perfect for Geralt, but I didn't like just the aesthetic of it. I thought things were too. How can I say it was too clean? Like,
interesting.
I'm very, very picky when it comes to fantasy. I'm very picky, almost a snob. C nerd badge. So like, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, those are the kind of fantasy aesthetics I really like. It's like lived in worlds. You know what I mean? I found the Witcher seemed a bit too studio produced. And I didn't like some of the casting. I don't mean along racial lines. I mean, sometimes when I watch a show and I see which actors they've gone for which parts, it gives me an idea about what to expect, and it usually impacts my enjoyment. And I just wasn't crazy about much of it. I really liked the action in one of the first scenes. He fights a bunch of guys, right? But even then, like, see the fight choreographer, and he's like, "Oh, that doesn't make sense. And why isn't that guy attacking? And he could have killed that guy right there. Why didn't he? And that guy's in a recessed alcove. He can't cut his head off. So that doesn't make sense." Like, that's my brain just right. But that's the thing that happens
right there.
Fight. And I can't look at that fight and go, "It's perfect." I go,
yeah,
I would have done this. I would have changed that. The media, whatever media I consume, I know I enjoyed if I'm continuously like going, "Oh wow, I'm surprised," and I didn't expect that, and I could never do that. You know what I mean?
It's if the stunt performer in you or the actor in you ends up actually starting to like critique it in real time, you know that they've lost you basically.
That's it. And I wear a lot of hats, right? So, and as I get older, my proficiency with different areas increases. So like another drawback is, I won't mention the name of it here, not to diss anyone's work, but there's a game I'm playing right now, which is a first-person game. It's kind of immersive, and it's a super fun game. I love the mechanics, but the voice acting is atrocious.
Oh no,
right? It's terrible. So whenever I play it and someone opens their mouth, I'm out. I'm like, I'm completely out. And then the voice director in me is like, who was directing these people? Like, there's no continuity of performance. This actor clearly doesn't know what he's saying. There's no context to what he's saying. That guy's just doing a funny voice, and they think that's good enough. Like, a lot of factors come in and influence my enjoyment of stuff.
Totally.
Because I judge it on a lot of different levels.
That totally connects back with what you said about how you deal with your imposter syndrome. it's like you've watching what you're playing a game like that, and you realize that there's some maybe not so great jobs being done by voice actors, and you feel like you could do a better job. Suddenly you can prop yourself up quite quickly when you see stuff like this. Let's see who else we got. How about this one? This is the one I thought I clicked on before. So favorite operator of the Rainbow franchise, aside from Lion, of course.
headed me off at the pass there.
Yeah.
I used to play a fair amount of Rainbow Six. I haven't played in a little while, but when I would play, I love snipers in general, and in most type games, I love sniping. Usually when I play any kind of co-op shooter game with my buddies, I'm usually the sniper. So I really like Cali and also Glaz. That's his name. Those are two of my favorite picks. And then when I do defense, I usually take Doc, actually, because I just like how he functions. And I also like, I forget his name, the giant guy who rams into people. He shoulder checks people, and he's a big brutish guy, but I forget his name.
I haven't played in a while. We're talking about Siege, I would assume now, right? Yeah.
Yes,
I played it a lot when it first came out, and I forget all the names of the characters, unfortunately.
So I tend to gravitate to like the more snipery dudes.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
Okay, how about, oh man, there's so many questions that are specific about it's just fun. Like you can see that people are really following what you're involved in. Okay, how about this one here? And you might not be able to answer this one because it's
Oryx,
kind of...
sorry. Thank you, Rainia Mitch.
Yes,
Oryx
that's
is the name of the character I was thinking of. Thank you.
Oh, nice. Will you be voicing any of the protagonists in the Outlast trials? Please say yes. You did a great job with Miles, Waylon, and Blake from previous games. It's not that easy to give a character personality without saying a word. First Outlast.
Gosh. I wish I could say yes. Technically, though, I cannot comment on this because Trials isn't out yet. I may or may not have worked on that game. I can say that.
Interesting.
But I can say I did not play the main character. As honored as I would be if they asked me back, I would also be a bit suspicious. I'd be like, guys, you cast me as the lead in 2 different games. I'm flattered, but how good do you think I am to play a completely different character in the third one?
Yes, that's right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think part of an artist also is recognizing when you're suited to something and when you're not. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But you can be wrong too. Like I used to think after Watch Dogs 2, I'm like, Wrench is awesome as a secondary character, but I don't think he could be a lead in something else. He could carry something. Then I did Legion, and he kind of co-carried the lead with Aiden. And I'm like, oh, I stand corrected. They wrote a good story around him. People loved what he did. So yeah, you know, I'd be down for that. But yeah, sadly, I can't speak on Outlast Trials, but maybe don't get your hopes up.
Yeah. You heard it here first, folks. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. We got, oh man, so many questions that are like fandom questions. I like it. How do you feel about the Bloodline DLC after playing it?
I loved it. I thought it was great. I was going to start with the Bloodline DLC when I hadn't played Legion until I played Wrench in Bloodline, so I got the game after the fact. And I was going to play the Bloodline DLC first. I'm like, nope, let me play the main game. So I actually played the main game with Wrench, mostly as my protagonist, and it was a lovely experience. So then by the time, I thought it really worked well, but by the time I got to Bloodline, which was purely Wrench and Aiden, I was good at the game. I knew how it worked, and you know how to do stuff. So I wasn't, because I didn't want to play my DLC in the first time, not having played Watch Dogs Legion and suck at it, and then not enjoy playing Wrench because I was terrible. So I played through it, got to the end, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and I'm really, really happy with how it turned out, and my performance and everyone's performance involved in the game I thought was just outstanding. So
I haven't had a chance to play that. I played Legion when it came out, but I haven't played Bloodline.
It's fun. It's great. And you know, a lot of people even said, I read in reviews or told me directly, that just having Wrench and Aiden available in the main campaign, which is you don't have a main protagonist, you just recruit whoever, gave the story depth and value that you just couldn't have with the regular characters. So
nice.
Kind of a nod towards how character-driven storytelling is still the way to go.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I love the idea they had at Ubisoft, but I think people prefer having characters with personalities and story.
Yeah, I just, considering the way that players interact with the game and the story in the game, it feels like that. I don't know. It just feels weird when it's not character driven. You know what I mean? Like it's like
you also outsource the storytelling to the player, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm going to make up my own backstory for my construction worker. Fine, but it's not supported necessarily in the story.
That's what's it's difficult.
Wrench, whatever he's trying to overcome, whatever Aiden's trying to figure out, we get to that in the story organically. You know, it's more satisfying.
I have a question here from Scott that sounds like a very technical question regarding sort of acting technique. So I'm going to put it up here. It's something that Ed Hooks talks about in his lectures. I don't know if you know who Ed Hooks is. Ed Hooks is okay. Ed Hooks he's actually interesting. I'd be kind of curious to get your perspective on Ed Hooks. He's an acting coach. He used to act a long time ago, but he actually ended up somehow being someone who is a bridge between acting and animators, and so he's made a bunch of books called Acting for Animators. He's quite the icon in the animation industry because he's just so prolific and he's so generous with his time. Are you familiar with something called the Laban Technique? I don't know if Scott.
Laban, yeah. I've heard of Laban. I know a number of actors who've trained under it or who teach it. I just don't. I've never experienced it firsthand.
Okay,
so I'm not exactly sure I know even what the application is.
Okay,
but I've definitely heard of it.
Scott, I think it's just Scott trying to flex his.
That is an acting school, though, like an acting method for sure. Like, you hear different. No, but like actors have all different approaches. Like, oh, I'm Meisner. I do a lot of Meisner. Oh, I do Laban. I do this. There's no right answer. Acting is so subjective. Whatever works for you. I went through a theater school. I learned all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, where did you go to school? What theater school did you go to?
I went to Dawson.
Right. I forgot you went to Dawson.
Professional theater program, also known as the Dome.
Yeah.
Because our theater is called the Dome Theater.
Yeah. Nice theater, actually.
They have they built a new one a few years ago.
Yeah.
The old one was really old, but a lot of character,
Yeah. Okay, so I have one last question here that I think is going to bring us to the end, probably. It's another. Well, actually, that's not true. I actually have my own little question I wanted to drop at the very end. It's not really a question, more of a fun topic to kind of close the conversation.
And there's one Brent that just popped out that is also quite fun.
I don't know if it's the same one. Let me just see.
This is water now. If people are still tracking what I'm drinking.
Yeah, sure it is, Shawn. Sure. Is it the question? Is it how much fun, David? Is that the one? Okay, I'll put it up. All right. How much fun are you having right now? Exactly now. I couldn't resist not asking.
I've been smiling the whole time. So none. No fun
whatsoever. That's what I thought.
Well,
you're an actor.
Love doing this. I love what I do. I love my job. I think I'm blessed to be able to not only make a living doing this, but I think I'm also blessed to live in a country that allows me to live doing this, right? I mean,
no doubt.
I work hard, sure, but if my parents hadn't supported me, if my wife hadn't supported me, if my country wasn't conducive to someone having those kind of freedoms to explore that, I wouldn't be an actor, and I don't think I'd be as happy in life. So I love what I do. I love talking about it. Not so much because I want to talk about myself, but over the years, I noticed a lot of people tend to get information or inspiration from what I say. They have questions. I love giving back. If I think of my journey to this moment as an actor, a lot of that is people taking time to be there for me, give me advice, support me, take a chance on me. So I always want to kind of pay that forward, as I'm a very grateful person. And so this, to me, this conversation, especially with you guys who are so great, and it really brings me back to when we used to work together. It makes me a little bit nostalgic, to be honest. It's lovely. It's like I'm checking in on my career in a bit. You guys are like witnesses to it, and it's lovely. I love it. I'd do it again in a second.
Awesome.
Shucks. You know what? I think that it's really interesting what you just said, because it's true, right? Like, especially take a look at the world today, it seems to be a little upside down, and the fact that we do live somewhere where this is a job. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, animators have that feeling every once in a while too, right? We're just like, we get paid to do this. Like, we're literally just going to work, nerding out about things we're naturally excited by, making a game or making a film that we probably would go and watch in the theater. This doesn't always end up being true, but sometimes it does. It's kind of pretty awesome, really. Like, I mean, if you can find a way of balancing your life around a job like this, it can be a lot of fun. Really?
It can be. I always make sure, though, that I never want to project this illusion of anyone can do it, and it's easy for me. This is the combination of 25 years of my life, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Of living in shitty apartments or not having any money, or my wife having to take out bank loans to support us because she didn't want me to get a job, because she knew that if I just kept pushing, I'd catch a break, and if I got a job, I'd never pursue acting. It's also I don't want to sound controversial with this, but part of what allows me personally to do this too is the choice I've made in life with my wife. One of them being, we never wanted kids, so we don't have kids, and kids are wonderful. I love kids. My sisters have 5 between them, and I love them to death. But, you know, that also gave me a bit more time and financial freedom to pursue this life. If I had, you know, 2, 3 kids, I don't know if I'd be able to continue being an actor because, you know, that's expensive. And, you know, Dave was talking about energy. You pour your life, the entirety of your being into kids. If you're a good father, you know, a good parent, and that's going to take away from your time and your energy and your health a little bit too, or can make it easier to take away from, and it makes it harder to stay healthy or engaged or whatever. So, you know, no one ever handed me a trust fund and said, go be an actor, and if you fail, it doesn't matter. You know, I am self-built. It's job. It's working as a waiter for 10 years. It's, you know, existential crisis at 3 a.m, waking up going, what am I doing? I'm an actor. What am I doing? I have a mortgage, you know. But swallowing that down and finding your peace, and then embracing, you know, your victories and kind of enjoying the ride. And, you know, again, I'm not flippant about it. I'm like, oh, it's fine. Whatever happens, I'll be fine. No, I still worry sometimes. But to me, that's part of the journey. And I really don't think I could be happier. Like when I'm headed home to my beautiful home with my wife, where my wife and my dog is, and, you know, I just had a great exhausting day and everyone was so happy with my work and I'm working on a cool project. I'm like, what's to complain about? You know what I mean? Like, I'm so blessed to be able to have that experience. I always want to make sure I have lots of gratitude. So yeah, I am, you know, very much enjoying doing this.
Gratitude is definitely one of the key for, you know, just life appreciation in general. It seems to be a constant feeling from those that are fully fulfilled with whatever they're doing.
I'd say so. It's what I hear from most people who, you know, have found that. And it's not easy to do necessarily, but a lot of it comes with also learning to forgive yourself and being compassionate with yourself and valuing yourself and, you know, having your boundaries and thinking you're worth it. You know what I mean? I see so much self-doubt and self-loathing and feelings of inadequacy on social media and around me. You know, it's disheartening. I understand why. The world is a bit of a dumpster fire. So that even gives me more contrast to go, wow, I'm glad to be where I am, and I want to, you know, make sure I stay humble and grateful.
I think the big takeaway too for me is just like choices need to be made and sacrifices will be made. You know, when it comes in, this is true for just about following any kind of dream or passion, right? It's like, it doesn't just come on a silver platter. Basically, it's like it's a lot of work. I wanted to drop one last thing. There's 2 things I need to do with before we close the stream. One of them is I see your comment, Renaru. I suck at this. Anyways, I see your comment about rating a channel. Absolutely. If you can just toss me the channel details in chat, I will be more than happy. But we've never rated anybody before, so it'll be fun to raid somebody. It's just Shawn, just to catch you up, there's another Watch Dogs related stream going on right now. So the idea was maybe because there's a whole pile of people in here would appreciate that conversation.
I second that. Jonathan is a dear friend of mine.
Oh, that's awesome.
Best relationships I forged when I worked on Watch Dogs 2. He became a friend of mine. I love him.
Yeah.
He's such a great guy. So totally.
Jonathan
Dubsky.
Okay, cool. So
he played Josh in Watch Dogs 2.
Oh, right on. Nice. That's perfect. So if just make sure you drop the channel name, because that's what I'll need to be able to raid the channel. But I did want to bring up one thing, just because I would be remiss to not bring up one of my favorite things that you've ever been a part of, and I'm going to drop it in chat right now. It's a link to the fan film Punisher that was made 8 years ago now.
Thanks,
I think, right?
guys. That's awesome.
And so Shawn starred as Punisher, and this is great. It's a lot of fun. If you're a fan of Punisher, I think you should go definitely have a look. I have a feeling that most people in chat have already seen it a few times, but
I've promoted it a few times. I don't knock people over the head with it when I can.
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
If you guys want to check it out, it's super fun. Yeah. I co-wrote it, co-directed.
That's right.
Co-edited, helped with the sound,
everything.
Star in it. I did all the choreography. I worked with some amazing people. It was very collaborative. Yeah, and it turned out better than I could have hoped. So it's a very fun film. A little violent, but very fun.
Punisher is kind of par for the course, I think, right?
Yeah.
Well, Shawn, honestly, it was amazing to have you on today. It was great catching up. David and I use this as a selfish way to catch up with awesome people. And so that box got checked nicely today with you on the stream. So
I had a
thank
lovely time talking to you guys. It was really great. And it was really nice to kind of walk down memory lane a little.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, have yourself a wonderful rest of your days, David and Shawn. I will stick around. Thank you very much, sir. And I'll stick around to make sure that this channel gets properly transferred to the right location on Twitch. Cross your fingers, because I've never done it before.
Do I like click to leave or something?
Yeah,
Am I going to be awkwardly hanging around?
Brent is just going to toss you out of
what I'll do
the
is
stage.
if you say something, it would be even better if you could be in the middle of saying goodbye and it cut you off in mid-sentence, and I'll throw you off. Go ahead.
Okay. David, good seeing you.
Bye, Shawn.
See you later, Shawn. We love you, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Oh, there you go. And now it's just me.
Well
done,
Brent. I was laughing so hard I pressed the wrong button. Okay, bye, Dave. All right, so let's figure out this whole transfer raid situation here. Because I'm using Restream. Hopefully this works like this. I think it probably should. Let's what could possibly go wrong? So I see the actual, it's Papa Doob, or Papa J Doob. Let me see. Raid channel. Papa J Doob. All right, Papa J Doob. Yeah, there it is. Papa J. Are they playing God of War right now? Papa J Doob? Is that what's happening? Could someone tell me if they're playing God of War? Because that's what it says that they're doing. I just want to make sure I have the right channel. Oops, I'm looking in the wrong chat. Oh yeah, that's them. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to do it. It's exciting. I've never done it before. So let's. I don't know what does that do to me. I think it just closes the stream and then you guys just run off and join that other one, I guess. I mean, like, I'm just going to throw the switch and see what happens. Before I do, thank you for being here today, Chad. It was awesome to have you. It's awesome to have a lot of new faces in here. I'm super excited to see Shawn has such a very enthusiastic and very loyal fan base. And welcome to the conversation. Welcome to Agora.Community. We, just so you know, we do a lot of streams. We have a website, Agora.Community, where we focus a lot on helping animators grow their skills, and part of that is a lot of free content on the site. We do streams every week, and anyway, so come back for another conversation, because we always have interesting conversations on here. So welcome to the channel, and we'll see you next time, hopefully on another stream. So let's hit this button and see what happens. It says it's ready to raid in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. See you later, everybody.